The rain came down hard that Tuesday evening, the kind that soaks through your jacket in seconds. Linda Hayes pulled her thin coat tighter around her shoulders as she hurried down Maple Street, her feet aching from another long day at the diner. 12 hours of serving coffee and clearing tables, and all she had to show for it was $83 in tips and exhaustion that settled deep into her bones. She stopped at Miller's corner store, the little bell jingling as she pushed through the door. Mr. Miller looked up from behind the counter and gave her a tired smile. They both worked too much. Both knew what it meant to count every dollar. "Just a loaf of bread tonight." "Mr. Miller," Linda said, fishing crumpled bills from her apron pocket. The bread cost $3.49. That left her with just enough for the bus fare tomorrow and maybe a cup of coffee at work. Her mother was waiting at home, and this bread would have to stretch for dinner tonight and breakfast tomorrow. She'd learned to make meals out of very little. Toast with butter, toast with the last bit of jam, sometimes just toast. "You take care in this rain," Mr. Miller said as he handed her the brown paper bag. "Always do," Linda replied, managing a smile despite how tired she felt. Outside, the rain had somehow gotten worse. The streetlights reflected off the wet pavement, creating pools of yellow light in the darkness. Linda clutched the paper bag close to her chest, trying to keep the bread dry. She needed to catch the next bus just 3 blocks away. Her mother would be wondering where she was. That's when she saw him. An older man sat hunched against the brick wall of the closed hardware store. His gray hair was plastered to his head from the rain, and his clothes looked like they hadn't been changed in days. He wasn't asking for money or holding a sign. He just sat there, arms wrapped around himself, shivering. Linda had walked past homeless people before. Everyone in the city did. Sometimes she'd drop $1 or $2 into a cup when she had it, but tonight something made her stop. Maybe it was the way he looked so small and defeated. Maybe it was because he reminded her of her own father, who'd passed away 5 years ago. Or maybe it was just that look in his eyes when he glanced up at her. Empty, lost, alone. She stood there for a moment, rain dripping from her hair, holding that paper bag with her last loaf of bread. Her stomach was already growling. Her mother hadn't eaten since lunch. They needed this bread, but this man looked like he needed it more. Before she could talk herself out of it, Linda opened the bag and tore the loaf right down the middle. The bigger half she held out to him. The smaller piece she kept for herself. "Here," she said simply. "You look hungry." The man's eyes widened. His hands, rough and weathered, reached out slowly like he couldn't quite believe what was happening. He took the bread with a gentleness that surprised her. Thank you," he said, his voice rough and quiet. "You don't know what this means." "It's just bread," Linda said, though they both knew it was more than that. "No," the man said, looking at the bread in his hands like it was made of gold. "It's not just bread. You gave me half of what you have. Most people don't even look at me." Linda crouched down beside him, not caring that the wet ground was soaking through her work pants. "What's your name?" "Robert," he said after a pause. "Most people just call me the old guy on the corner. I'm Linda." She settled back against the wall beside him. "You been out here long?" "Long enough," Robert said, taking a small bite of the bread. He chewed slowly, savoring it. "Long enough to learn a lot about people." "Like what?" Robert was quiet for a moment, watching the rain fall. "I've learned that most folks walk past without seeing. Not because they're bad people. They're just busy. Got their own troubles, their own lives to worry about." Linda nodded. She understood that better than most. "Yeah, I get that. Some days I'm so tired I barely notice anything except putting one foot in front of the other." "But you stopped," Robert said, looking at her with eyes that seemed to see right through her. "You stopped when you have your own troubles. I can tell. You work hard. You're tired. You probably need this bread more than I do." "Maybe," Linda admitted. "But you're out here in the rain. I've got a roof over my head. A warm place to sleep. That puts me ahead of a lot of people." They sat there together for a while, 2 strangers sharing bread in the rain. Robert told her he'd been on the streets for several months. He didn't go into details about how he got there, and Linda didn't push. Everyone had their story. Everyone had their reasons. Linda told him about her mother, about the arthritis that made it hard for her to get around anymore, about working at the diner and dreaming of maybe someday having enough saved up to take a real vacation. Nothing fancy, Just a few days somewhere quiet. You're a good daughter, Robert said. Your mother's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her, Linda replied. She raised me by herself after my dad died. Taught me everything I know about being decent to people. She taught you well, Robert said softly. The bus was probably long gone by now. Linda would have to walk the 20 blocks home, but somehow she didn't mind. This felt important, this moment with Robert. Like maybe they both needed it. I should get going, Linda finally said, standing up stiffly. Her knees protested, and she realized she'd been sitting on the cold ground longer than she thought. My mom worries if I'm too late. Of course, Robert said, also standing. He was taller than she'd expected, and something about the way he carried himself seemed almost dignified despite his ragged clothes. Thank you, Linda, really. You've given me more than bread tonight. Take care of yourself, Robert, Linda said, meaning it. You too, he replied. And Linda? Don't lose that kindness. The world needs more people like you. She walked away into the rain, clutching her half loaf of bread, thinking about Robert's words. She'd done nothing special, really. Just shared some food with someone who needed it. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the small things mattered most. By the time Linda made it home, her clothes were soaked through and her feet were killing her. Her mother was waiting in the living room, the TV playing some old movie. You're late, her mother said, worry creasing her face. I was getting concerned. Sorry, Mom, missed the bus. Linda held up the half loaf of bread with a sheepish smile. And I met someone who needed this more than we did. Her mother looked at the bread, then at her daughter's face, and understanding crossed her features. She didn't scold or complain about having less food. She just smiled, that warm smile that had gotten Linda through so many hard times. That's my girl, she said simply. They made toast that night, buttered and warm, and it was enough. It was always enough when they had each other. Linda fell asleep that night thinking about Robert, hoping he'd found somewhere dry to spend the night. She'd probably never see him again. That's how the city worked. People crossed paths and moved on. She had no idea how wrong she was. 3 weeks passed, and Linda almost forgot about that rainy night with Robert. Almost. Sometimes when she walked past that corner, she'd look for him, but he was never there. She hoped he was okay wherever he'd gone. Life kept moving forward like it always did. Wake up, take care of Mom, go to work, come home exhausted, repeat. It wasn't a bad life, just a hard one. The kind where you learn not to dream too big because disappointment hurt less that way. Then her mother collapsed in the bathroom. Linda heard the thud from the kitchen where she was making breakfast. Her heart stopped for a second before her feet started moving. She found her mom on the floor, conscious but in pain, holding her chest. Mom, talk to me. My chest hurts. Can't breathe right, her mother gasped. The ambulance ride felt like the longest 20 minutes of Linda's life. She held her mother's hand the whole way, praying to anyone who might be listening. At the hospital, doctors rushed her mother into examination while Linda sat in the waiting room, still wearing her pajamas under her coat. Hours later, a doctor with kind eyes and tired face sat down beside her. Your mother needs heart surgery soon. The blockage is severe. Okay, Linda said, her mind racing. Okay, when? We can schedule it for next week. But there's the matter of cost. The doctor pulled out some papers. Your insurance will cover about 60%. The remaining balance is around $15,000. $15,000. Linda felt the floor drop out from under her. She had maybe $800 in her savings account. $800 that was supposed to be for emergencies, but she'd never imagined an emergency this big. Is there a payment plan or? Her voice sounded small even to her own ears. We can discuss options with the billing department, the doctor said gently, but some upfront payment will be required before we can schedule the surgery. Linda nodded, not trusting herself to speak. After the doctor left, she sat there staring at nothing. $15,000 might as well have been $15 million. Where would she even start? She picked up extra shifts at the diner. Every single one they'd give her. Morning to night, barely sleeping. Her feet hurt so bad she could hardly stand, but she kept going. She asked her boss about an advance. He gave her $200, looking genuinely sorry he couldn't do more. She called every charity organization she could find. Most had waiting lists months long. Some didn't call back. One offered her $300 if she qualified after filling out 17 pages of paperwork. By the end of 2 weeks, Linda had scraped together maybe $3,000. She was exhausted, running on coffee and anxiety. Her mother was still in the hospital, stable but waiting. Every day the doctors asked about the surgery schedule, and every day Linda had to say soon, hopefully soon. She was working the lunch shift on a Wednesday when it happened. The diner was busy, full of the usual crowd, office workers on their lunch break, a few regulars, some truckers passing through. Linda was refilling coffee when the bell above the door chimed. A man in an expensive suit walked in. Everything about him screamed money, from his polished shoes to his leather briefcase. He looked completely out of place in their little diner with its cracked vinyl booths and sticky tables. He looked straight at Linda. "Excuse me, are you Linda Hayes?" The coffee pot nearly slipped from her hands. Nobody ever came to the diner looking for her. "Yes, who's asking?" "My name is Thomas Chen. I'm an attorney. I have a client who wishes to speak with you about a matter of significant importance." The diner went quiet. Everyone was staring now. Linda's coworker Beverly raised her eyebrows like, "What did you do?" "I think you have the wrong person," Linda said. "I don't know any lawyers. Nevertheless, my client has specifically requested a meeting with you, Linda Hayes, who works at this establishment." Thomas pulled out a business card. "Would you be available tomorrow afternoon? My office is downtown. I can arrange transportation if needed." Linda's mind was spinning. Was this about some old debt? A parking ticket she'd forgotten? But she'd never even gotten a parking ticket. She didn't own a car. "What's this about?" she asked. "I'm not at liberty to discuss the details here," Thomas said, "but I assure you you're not in any trouble. Quite the opposite, actually." Her boss, Joey, came out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron. "Everything okay here, Linda?" I don't know," Linda admitted. Thomas handed her the card. "Please consider it. 2 o'clock tomorrow at this address. I really think you'll want to hear what my client has to say." Then he left just like that, leaving Linda standing there with a business card in her hand and half the diner staring at her. "Girl, what was that about?" Beverly demanded the second the door closed. "I have no idea," Linda said honestly. That night she couldn't sleep. She kept looking at that business card, turning it over in her hands. Should she go? Was this some kind of scam? But what could they possibly scam her for? She had nothing. Finally, she called her mother at the hospital. "Mom, something weird happened today." After Linda explained, her mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think you should go. Take someone with you if you're worried, but go. What have you got to lose?" The next day, Linda asked Beverly to come with her. Beverly agreed immediately, clearly dying of curiosity. They took the bus downtown to an address that turned out to be a gleaming office building, with marble floors and security guards. "This is fancy," Beverly whispered as they rode the elevator to the 15th floor. Thomas Chen met them in the lobby of his office suite. If he was surprised Linda brought a friend, he didn't show it. "Thank you for coming. Please follow me." He led them down a hallway to a conference room with huge windows overlooking the city. And there, sitting at the table in a sharp navy suit, was someone Linda never expected to see again. Robert. But not the Robert from that rainy night. This Robert had neat hair, clean-shaven face, and an air of confidence that made him look like he belonged in this expensive office. Only his eyes were the same, those eyes that had looked so lost and empty that night. "Hello, Linda," he said, standing up. "Thank you for coming. I imagine you're quite confused." "Robert?" Linda couldn't believe what she was seeing. "What? How? I don't understand. Please sit down. Both of you." Robert gestured to the chairs. "I owe you an explanation. A big one." Beverly grabbed Linda's hand and squeezed it. They sat down together, both too shocked to speak. Robert took a deep breath. "That night we met, everything I told you was true. I was homeless. I had been living on the streets. But I left out some important details." He paused. "My full name is Robert Ashford, and I'm worth about $47 million. The room spun. Linda gripped the edge of the table. "I know how this sounds," Robert continued, "but please let me explain everything. You deserve to know the truth about why I was there that night and why I asked you here today." Beverly let out a sound that was half laugh, half gasp. "This is insane." "It is," Robert agreed, a small smile crossing his face. "But it's also true. Every word of it." Linda found her voice, though it came out shaky. "Why? Why would someone with that much money be living on the streets?" Robert's smile faded, replaced by something sadder. Because I was looking for something money couldn't buy, and then you gave me half your bread. He leaned forward. Linda, I need to tell you a story. About my wife, about loss, and about what I learned living on those streets. And then I need to tell you why I asked you here today, especially now when I understand you need help. Linda's blood went cold. How do you know I need help? Because, Robert said gently, I've been keeping an eye on things, making sure you were okay, and I learned about your mother. He pushed a folder across the table, which is why we need to talk about what happens next. Linda stared at the folder on the table like it might bite her. Beverly was squeezing her hand so hard it hurt, but she barely noticed. Robert sat across from them, waiting patiently like he had all the time in the world. You've been watching me? Linda finally managed to say. That's kind of creepy, Robert. I know how it sounds, Robert said, holding up his hands. Let me explain everything from the beginning, please. Then if you want to leave and never speak to me again, I'll understand completely. Linda nodded slowly. What choice did she have? She was already here, sitting in this fancy office, her whole world turned upside down. Robert stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. 2 years ago, my wife passed away. Her name was Margaret. We'd been married for 33 years. His voice got quiet. She was the best person I ever knew. Kind to everyone. Didn't matter if you were a janitor or a CEO, she treated everyone the same. He turned back to face them. After she died, I fell apart. I kept going to work, kept managing my investments, kept showing up to charity dinners and business meetings, but inside I was empty. And I started noticing something. What? Beverly asked, leaning forward despite herself. People only wanted to be around me because of my money, Robert said bitterly. Old friends called to ask for investments. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanted to have dinner. Everyone had an angle. Everyone wanted something. He sat back down. I started wondering if anyone would care about me at all if I had nothing. Linda was starting to understand, but it still seemed crazy. So you decided to become homeless? Not at first, Robert admitted. At first, I just started taking walks at night. Long walks through parts of the city I'd never been to. Rich people live in a bubble, you know. We don't see how most people actually live. He paused. One night I was walking through a rough neighborhood and I saw an old man sleeping in a doorway. Everyone just walked past him, like he was invisible. And you wondered what that was like, Linda said softly. Yes. Robert's eyes met hers. Margaret used to volunteer at shelters. She'd come home and tell me stories about the people she met. Real people with real problems, not just looking for handouts. After she died, I couldn't shake this feeling that I needed to understand what she'd been trying to show me all those years. Thomas the lawyer, who'd been standing quietly by the door, spoke up. Mr. Ashford, maybe I should... No, Thomas. She needs to hear this from me. Robert looked at Linda again. 6 months ago, I made a decision. I put my assistant in charge of my business affairs, gave Thomas power of attorney to handle my legal matters, and I walked out of my penthouse apartment with nothing but the clothes on my back. Beverly made a small noise of disbelief. You just... left? I did. I wanted to experience life the way Margaret saw it. The way real people live when they don't have a safety net. Robert's voice got heavy. And let me tell you, those 6 months taught me more than 60 years of comfortable living ever did. Linda thought about that rainy night, about how defeated Robert had looked sitting against that wall. It hadn't been an act. The pain in his eyes had been real. I learned that most people are too busy surviving to notice anyone else, Robert continued. I learned that being invisible is its own kind of death. I sat on street corners for hours and maybe 1 person in 100 would even look at me. Most just walked right past. But I stopped, Linda said quietly. You stopped. Robert's expression softened. And you didn't just stop. You gave me half of what you had. Not spare change. Not leftovers. You literally tore your last loaf of bread in half and gave me the bigger piece. It was just bread, Linda said, though her throat felt tight. No, it wasn't. Robert shook his head firmly. I watched you leave that store. I saw you counting your money, saw how careful you were. I knew that bread was important to you. And you gave it anyway. He leaned forward. Do you know how many wealthy people I've known who give millions to charity? Lots. They write checks and feel good about themselves. But you know what? Those millions don't hurt them. They'll never miss that money. Beverly was nodding now, understanding dawning on her face. But you, Robert pointed at Linda, you gave from a place of need. You sacrificed something you actually needed for a stranger you'd never see again. That's the kind of person my Margaret was. That's what she'd been trying to teach me about real kindness. Linda felt tears burning behind her eyes. So what happens now? You've figured out your life lesson or whatever. Why am I here? Thomas stepped forward and opened the folder. Because Mr. Ashford would like to help with your mother's medical expenses. There it was. The real reason. Linda felt something cold settle in her stomach. I don't want charity. It's not charity, Robert said quickly. Linda, please hear me out. Then what is it? Linda stood up, anger rising in her chest. You feel guilty? You want to ease your conscience by throwing money at the poor waitress who was nice to you? Is that it? No. Robert stood too. That's not what this is. Then what? Linda's voice cracked. Because I don't need you to save me, Robert. I don't need some rich guy feeling sorry for me. I know you don't, Robert said firmly. That's exactly why I want to talk to you about this. Please just sit down and let me explain the rest. Beverly tugged Linda's hand. Come on, honey. At least hear him out. Linda sat back down, arms crossed, jaw tight. Fine, talk. Robert took a deep breath. My wife, Margaret, ran a foundation. It was supposed to help working families who fell through the cracks. People with jobs who still couldn't make ends meet. People like you, Linda. People who work hard and play by the rules but still get crushed when something goes wrong. Thomas pulled out more papers. The Ashford Family Foundation. It's been running for 12 years. After Margaret died, I let the board handle everything, Robert continued. I was too grief-stricken to care. But recently I looked at the numbers. We're giving away millions of dollars every year. But I have no idea if it's actually helping anyone. It's just bureaucracy, paperwork, committees deciding who's worthy. I still don't understand what this has to do with me, Linda said. Everything, Robert replied. That foundation needs someone who actually understands what it's like to struggle, someone who knows what real people need, not what some board members in expensive suits think they need. He paused. I want you to run it, Linda. The room went completely silent. You what? Linda and Beverly said at the same time. I want you to be the executive director of the Ashford Family Foundation. I want you to take Margaret's vision and make it real. Make it actually help people. Linda laughed, but it came out harsh and bitter. Are you insane? Robert, I barely graduated high school. I've never run anything except between tables at a diner. I don't know the first thing about running a foundation. You know the most important thing, Robert said. You know what it's like to need help. You know how the system fails people. You know what real kindness looks like. He leaned forward intently. I can teach you the business side. Thomas can handle the legal stuff. I'll be there every step of the way. But the heart of it, the vision, the understanding of who we're really trying to help, that has to come from someone who's lived it. This is crazy, Linda whispered. The salary is $120,000 a year, Thomas said quietly. Plus benefits, including health insurance that would cover your mother's surgery completely. Linda's head snapped up. What? You'd start immediately, Robert said. Your mother would be covered under the foundation's insurance plan. The surgery could happen next week. It was too much. Too big. Too impossible. Linda felt like she couldn't breathe. I need to think. This is insane, Beverly finished for her, but also maybe amazing. Take the night, Robert said gently. Go see your mother. Talk to her. Sleep on it. But Linda, I need you to understand something. He waited until she looked at him. This isn't about charity. This isn't about me feeling guilty. This is about finding someone who has what Margaret had, a real heart for helping people. You proved you have that heart that night in the rain. I just shared some bread, Linda said weakly. No, Robert said. You shared what you couldn't afford to share. And that makes all the difference. Linda stood up on shaky legs. Beverly stood with her, supporting her arm. I need to go. I can't think here, of course. Robert walked them to the door. Linda, whatever you decide, your mother's surgery will be taken care of. That's not conditional on anything. Consider it a thank you for reminding me what kindness looks like. Linda looked at him. This man who'd been homeless and turned out to be a millionaire, who wanted to give her a job she wasn't qualified for, who was offering to save her mother's life. It was too much to process. I'll call you tomorrow, she finally said. Outside on the street, Beverly let out a long breath. Girl, what just happened in there? I have no idea, Linda said. Absolutely no idea. But as they rode the bus to the hospital, Linda couldn't stop thinking about what Robert had said. About Margaret. About real kindness. About whether maybe, just maybe, this impossible thing could actually be real. Linda sat beside her mother's hospital bed, holding her hand. She'd been sitting there for an hour, trying to find the right words to explain what had happened. Every time she started, it sounded too crazy to be real. Mom, something happened today, she finally said. Her mother squeezed her hand. Tell me. So Linda did. She told her everything. About Robert being a millionaire. About the foundation. About the job offer that seemed too good to be true. About the insurance that would cover the surgery immediately. When she finished, her mother was quiet for a long time. The machines beeped steadily in the background. Somewhere down the hall, a nurse laughed at something. What do you think I should do? Linda asked. I think, her mother said slowly, that you're scared. Of course I'm scared. Mom, I don't know how to run a foundation. I'd probably mess everything up. Her mother turned her head to look directly at Linda. You remember when your father died? You were 22 years old. You just started that job at the grocery store. I remember, Linda said quietly. You came home that day and found me crying at the kitchen table. Bills everywhere. No idea how we'd make rent. Her mother's eyes got misty. You looked at me and said, we'll figure it out, Mom, together. And we did. That was different. How? Her mother asked. You didn't know how to be the breadwinner. You didn't know how to manage money or deal with landlords or any of it. But you learned. Because you had to. Because you cared. Linda felt tears starting. What if I fail? What if I take this job and everyone realizes I don't belong there? Then you'll learn and do better, her mother said simply. Baby, you've been working at that diner for 6 years. You're good at it. You work hard. But is that all you want? Just surviving day to day? I don't know what I want, Linda admitted. I never let myself think about it. Wanting things is expensive. Her mother struggled to sit up more, wincing a little. Linda adjusted the pillows behind her. Listen to me. When I was your age, I wanted to be a teacher. Did you know that? Linda shook her head. Her mother had never mentioned this. I was actually accepted to the state college. Had a scholarship and everything. Her mother smiled sadly. But then I got pregnant with you. Your father and I got married. The scholarship didn't cover married students, so I worked at the factory instead. Mom, I'm sorry. Don't you dare apologize, her mother said firmly. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you because I want you to understand something. I don't regret having you, not for 1 second. But I do regret that I was too scared to try again later, too scared to go back to school when you were older. Too comfortable with what I knew even if it wasn't what I dreamed about. Linda wiped her eyes. I'm not like you, though. You're brave. You raised me alone after Dad died. I did what I had to do, same as you've been doing. But that's not the same as being brave. Her mother reached up and touched Linda's face. Being brave is doing something even when you're terrified. Taking this job? That would be brave. What if Robert's wrong about me? What if I can't do it? Then at least you tried, her mother said. And honestly, from what you've told me, this man spent 6 months homeless looking for someone with a good heart. He found you. Maybe trust that he sees something you don't see in yourself yet. Linda sat there for a while, just holding her mother's hand. Finally, she said, I'm still scared. Good, her mother replied. Means it matters. That night, Linda barely slept. She kept thinking about everything. About the diner and her aching feet and her tiny apartment. About bills and worry and the constant weight of never having enough. But also about Margaret, this woman she'd never met who'd spent her life trying to help people. About Robert's words. About her mother's face when she'd said, at least you tried. By morning, Linda had made her decision. She called the number on Thomas's business card. Her hands were shaking as she dialed. Chen and Associates. A professional voice answered. Hi, this is Linda Hayes. I need to speak with Thomas Chen. Please, 1 moment. Thomas picked up almost immediately. Linda, I was hoping you'd call. I want to say yes, Linda said quickly before she could change her mind. But I have conditions. I'm listening. First, I want my mother's surgery scheduled within the week. I want to see the insurance paperwork myself. Already done, Thomas said. The coverage was activated this morning. I'll email you everything. Linda blinked. You were that sure I'd say yes? No, Thomas said. But Mr. Ashford was clear that your mother's care wasn't conditional. Whether you took the job or not, she was to be covered. Something in Linda's chest loosened a little. Okay, second condition. I want a trial period. 3 months. If I'm terrible at this, I walk away and you find someone qualified. 6 months, Thomas countered. 3 isn't enough time to really learn the role. But agreed in principle. Third, Linda said, her voice stronger now. I want to actually help people. Real people with real problems. Not just move papers around and attend fancy dinners. If this is just for show, I'm not interested. That's exactly what Mr. Ashford wants too, Thomas said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. When can you start? Linda thought about the diner, about Joey who'd given her so many shifts, about Beverly who'd become a real friend. I need to give my boss 2 weeks' notice. It's the right thing to do. Mr. Ashford will appreciate that, Thomas said. How about this? Come in on Monday. We'll do the paperwork, get you set up with an office, start the training process. You can work part-time here while you finish up at the diner. We'll pay you starting Monday. Okay, Linda said. Okay, I'll be there. After she hung up, Linda sat on her couch staring at her phone. Had she really just done that? Changed her entire life in a 5-minute phone call? Her phone buzzed. A text from Beverly. Girl, did you call them yet? I've been up all night thinking about this. Linda smiled and texted back. I did it. I took the job. Her phone immediately rang. Beverly was screaming so loud Linda had to hold the phone away from her ear. The 2 weeks at the diner flew by and crawled at the same time. Linda told Joey about the new job, leaving out the crazy details. He was happy for her, but sad to lose her. Best waitress I ever had, he said, getting a little choked up. You're gonna do great things, kid. She spent her mornings at the foundation's office, learning everything she could. Robert was there every day, patient and encouraging. He introduced her to the staff, showed her how everything worked, explained the finances and the mission. Don't try to learn it all at once, he told her when he caught her up at midnight reading grant proposals. This is a marathon, not a sprint. The foundation was bigger than she'd imagined. They had programs for emergency assistance, education support, job training, healthcare access. But Robert was right. It all felt disconnected, like different parts of a machine that didn't quite fit together. What would you change? Robert asked her one afternoon. They were in his office looking at reports. Honestly, Linda said, everything feels too complicated. Like if I was desperate and needed help, I wouldn't know where to start with all these forms and requirements. Robert smiled. Good. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. What else? Well, Linda said, warming up to the topic. When you're broke and working 3 jobs, you don't have time to fill out 20 pages of paperwork and wait 6 weeks for a committee to decide if you're worthy of help. By then, you've already been evicted or your car's been repossessed or whatever crisis you had has gotten way worse. So how do we fix it? Linda thought about that rainy night, about being hungry and tired, about seeing someone who needed help. We make it simple. We make it fast. We trust people. If someone comes to us and says they need help with rent this month or they'll be homeless, we help them. Right then. Not 6 weeks later. The board will hate that, Robert said. They'll say people will take advantage. Maybe some will, Linda admitted. But most won't. Most people just need a little help to get through a rough patch, and even if a few people take advantage, isn't that better than letting good people suffer while we do background checks and verify their worthiness? Robert was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed. Margaret would have said exactly that, word for word. He stood up and held out his hand. You're going to change everything here, Linda. I can feel it. Linda shook his hand, still not quite believing this was her life now. I hope so. I really hope so. Her mother's surgery happened on a Thursday morning. Linda sat in the waiting room, Robert beside her. He'd shown up at the hospital without being asked, just to be there. You didn't have to come, Linda said. I know, Robert replied, but Margaret always said nobody should wait alone. And you've become a friend, Linda. Friends show up. The surgery went perfectly. 3 hours later, Linda was holding her mother's hand again, watching her sleep peacefully, the monitors showing strong, steady heartbeats. We did it, Mom, Linda whispered. We're going to be okay. And for the first time in a long time, she actually believed it. 6 months later, Linda sat in her office looking at the numbers on her computer screen. She still couldn't quite believe they were real. In half a year, the foundation had helped 347 families. Real meaningful help. Rent paid before eviction notices turned into actual evictions. Medical bills cleared before they destroyed credit scores. Car repairs covered so people didn't lose their jobs because they couldn't get to work. But it wasn't just about the numbers. There was the single dad who cried in her office when they paid for his daughter's asthma medication. The elderly woman who could finally afford both her heart pills and groceries. The young couple who kept their apartment after the husband broke his leg and missed 2 weeks of work. Every single one of them reminded Linda of herself, of her mother, of everyone she'd ever known who worked hard and still struggled. "You're doing it again," Robert said from her doorway. Linda looked up and smiled. "Doing what?" "Working late. It's almost 8 o'clock. He walked in and sat across from her. "You know, when I hired you, I didn't expect you to work harder than I did." "Can't help it," Linda said. "Every application I read, I see myself. I see my mom. I can't just leave them sitting in a pile until tomorrow." Robert nodded. Margaret was the same way. But she learned that you can't pour from an empty cup. You need to take care of yourself too. I know. Linda closed her laptop. "How's the community center looking?" "Come see for yourself." They walked 2 blocks to the new building the foundation had just purchased. It used to be an old grocery store empty for years. Now it was being transformed into something beautiful. Inside, construction workers were putting finishing touches on what would be a space for job training classes, a food pantry, and a place where people could come for help without feeling like they were begging. "The kids' area is almost done," Robert said, leading her to a bright room in the back. "Parents can bring their children here while they're taking classes or meeting with caseworkers." Linda looked around at the colorful walls, the shelves waiting for books and toys. "It's perfect. You designed it," Robert pointed out. "Well, you and that committee of former clients. That had been Linda's idea too. Instead of having rich board members decide what poor people needed, she'd created an advisory board of people who'd actually used the foundation's services. People who knew what it was like to need help. The board of directors had been skeptical at first. Some had even been openly hostile. But Linda had stood her ground and Robert had backed her up. Now, 6 months later, even the skeptics had to admit the foundation was more effective than it had ever been. "I got a call today," Linda said as they walked through the space, "from a reporter. She wants to do a story about the foundation's new direction." "What did you tell her?" "That I'd think about it." Linda ran her hand along a freshly painted wall. "Part of me wants to say yes. Maybe it would inspire other organizations to change how they work. But part of me worries about people's privacy. The families we help, they don't need cameras in their faces. That's why you're good at this job," Robert said. "You think about them first." They locked up and walked outside. The neighborhood was quieter now, darker. Street lights reflected off wet pavement from an earlier rain. "You know what today is?" Linda asked. Robert thought for a moment, then smiled. 6 months since that night. 7 months, actually. But 6 months since I started working here. Linda stopped walking and turned to him. "I never properly thanked you, Robert, for believing in me, for giving me this chance." "You thanked me by being exactly who I thought you were," Robert said. "Someone who genuinely cares. Someone who remembers what it's like to struggle." They started walking again, passing the corner where they'd first met. Linda found herself looking at the spot where Robert had been sitting that rainy night, wet and alone. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "Being out here, I mean. Seeing the world that way?" Robert was quiet for a moment.
Sometimes.
"Not the cold or the hunger or the fear, but the clarity, yes. When you have nothing, you see what really matters. Who really cares?" He glanced at her. "But I don't need to be homeless to remember those lessons anymore. I have you to remind me." They said goodnight at the corner and Linda headed home on the bus. She still took the bus most days even though she could afford a car now. Something about it kept her grounded, reminded her where she came from. At home, her mother was in the kitchen making soup. She'd recovered beautifully from the surgery and had even started volunteering at the community center twice a week. "There's my girl," her mom said, ladling soup into bowls. "How was work?" "Good, busy." Linda sat down at the table. "We helped a family today that reminded me of us. Mom working 2 jobs, 3 kids behind on rent." "And you fixed it?" "We fixed it," Linda corrected. "Paid 3 months of rent to give her breathing room. Got her enrolled in job training. Connected her with childcare assistants." Her mother set the soup down and sat across from her. "You know what I'm proudest of?" What? That you didn't forget? You could have taken this job and become like all those other people Robert talked about. Disconnected. But you stayed you. Linda smiled. Kind of hard to forget where you come from when you're still living in the same apartment. We could move, you know, her mother said. You make good money now, I know. Maybe someday. But right now, this feels right. This is home. The next morning, Linda was at the foundation early. She had a 9 o'clock meeting with a woman named Patricia, who'd called about needing help. Linda always tried to do these initial meetings herself when she could. Patricia arrived right on time, nervous and apologetic. She was maybe 40, with tired eyes and hands that wouldn't stop moving. Thank you for seeing me, Patricia said, sitting down. I know you're busy. I almost didn't call. I've never asked for help before. Linda heard those words at least once a week. I'm glad you did. Tell me what's going on. Patricia's story spilled out. Working as a nurse's aide, barely making enough to cover bills. Her teenage daughter needed medication for depression that insurance wouldn't fully cover. She was $50 short on rent and afraid of getting evicted. I just need a little help, Patricia said, tears in her eyes, just to get through this month. I'll pay it back, I promise. We don't need you to pay it back, Linda said gently. That's not how this works. She spent the next hour with Patricia, not just solving the immediate crisis, but looking at the bigger picture. They worked out a budget, connected her with better-paying job opportunities, got her daughter enrolled in a mental health program that was free. When Patricia left, she hugged Linda. You don't know what this means. I was so scared. I do know, Linda said. More than you realize. After Patricia left, Linda sat at her desk for a moment. Then she pulled out her phone and called the reporter back. I'll do the interview, she told her, but on one condition. I want to tell the whole story. About how I was struggling too. About how one moment of kindness changed everything. Because people need to know that helping each other matters. That small things can become big things. That evening, Linda did something she hadn't done in a while. She walked to the corner store, the same one where she'd bought that loaf of bread 7 months ago. Mr. Miller looked up and smiled. Linda, haven't seen you in forever. How's your mom? She's great, healthy and happy. Linda picked up a loaf of bread and brought it to the counter. Outside, she saw a young woman sitting against the wall, shivering in the cold. She looked lost, scared, alone. Linda didn't hesitate. She walked over, tore the bread in half, and held out the larger piece. Here, she said. You look like you could use this. The young woman looked up, shock in her eyes. Thank you. You don't have to. I know, Linda said, sitting down beside her. What's your name? Katie. I'm Linda. You doing okay, Katie? Katie laughed, but it came out sad. Not really. Lost my job last month. Got evicted last week. I don't know what I'm doing. Linda reached into her purse and pulled out a card. Her card. The foundation's card. Listen to me, Katie. I know things seem impossible right now. I've been there. Closer than you might think. She pressed the card into Katie's hand. Call this number tomorrow. Ask for me. We're going to help you figure this out. Why? Katie asked, tears streaming down her face. Why would you help me? Linda thought about Robert, about Margaret, who she'd never met. About her mother's words about trying even when you're scared. About how one rainy night had changed everything. Because someone helped me once, Linda said simply, and now I get to pass it on. She sat there with Katie for a while, sharing bread in the cold. Two strangers who wouldn't be strangers for long. And Linda understood, maybe for the first time, what Robert had been searching for on those streets. Connection, purpose. The simple, profound truth that we're all just trying to get by. And that sometimes, kindness is the only thing that saves us. Above them, the city hummed with life. Millions of people rushing past each other every day. Most too busy to stop. Too worried about their own problems to see anyone else's. But here, on this corner, two people stopped. Shared bread, shared hope, and that was enough. That was everything. Linda walked home that night with a light heart, knowing that tomorrow Katie would call and together they'd figure something out. Just like someone had done for her, just like she'd do for the next person and the next, the circle was complete. But it wasn't ending. It was just beginning, spreading outward like ripples in water, one act of kindness at a time.